Guys, welcome back to episode number 157 of Take Flight podcast. And your favorite quartet are back for another jam packed group episode. Now, today we are discussing a very hot topic or hot topics. We're discussing Twitter, Elon Musk, and the power of speed in business. Now, in the news nowadays, it's hard to avoid those topics that we've just mentioned. But as always, we are here to unpack, discuss, and see what we can learn from this corporate takeover saga. In this episode, we recap the timeline of the deal. We also discuss whether Twitter is a good business to buy. As well as this, we try and understand the business of Elon and would you partner with him? We also discuss a very important topic in terms of speed in business. Is it important? And then closing the episode with a bull or bear prediction on the most talked about social media platform today. Now, important information, this podcast is for information purposes only. Matters discussed are not intended to provide and should not be relied on as investment, accounting, legal, or tax advice or recommendation. The views and opinions presented are those of the four podcasters, and these may change. Now, we advise that you seek and or obtain independent professional advice in relation to your personal circumstances. Finally, before the music hits, if you have 5 seconds, please remember to subscribe on whichever platform you listen to us on. Leave a review on Spotify. Now you can leave reviews, which takes about literally 10 seconds. And also, in case you want to see our faces or watch us on video, our amazing producer Nandi has uploaded all our content on YouTube. So please have a look there and subscribe. And let's start the music and get into this episode.
Take off, take flight with you. For we never fly, but we're flying.
Right, guys, it feels like it's been a short while since we all saw each other. How is everyone doing? Pete, let's start with you because you're above me in the screen as of now. So how are you doing?
There's a lot to celebrate in today's catch up before we kick off. Myself and Olu are 1 year wiser, 1 year sharper, 1 year more mature, 1 year wealthier, all of the above. So my birthday was November 5th. Olu was November 7th yesterday. But yeah, just a great opportunity to reflect on the journey, be thankful for how far we've come. So I really enjoyed the time with the family. We went to the mountains, and it was the four of us. It was just a perfect weekend. So yeah, no, that's it was a great day. It was a great day.
No, love hearing that, Pete. Maybe Ollie, if you go next, and then Daniel and I can jump in.
So, P, how was the journey to 5th of November?
Yeah, so so we're obviously going to get into what these guys, they can't wait to share this part. But for those who are not following me on Instagram, I basically set myself a challenge, which was basically to pick a date in the calendar, and I picked November 5th. And the whole point of the journey was to reach my peak physical and mental state. But I set that goal knowing that I had so much in the process, in the journey, right? So another baby on the way, still working, property, all of the things that are happening. So it was to not fight, it was to not make an excuse, because in the past I've been very on and off, and it was to challenge myself to stay in long enough to achieve the goal. And yeah, we got there. Olu is very keen to see the goal, before,
so that means
before and after pictures.
100%. If you achieved the, so you're saying that right now you're in the optimum 100%. Physical specimen of your whole life.
If I back off this top, I look like a bachelor. 100%. 100%.
So, were there any curveballs along the way? You mentioned about being disciplined.
Yeah, I was reflecting on the journey.
Mental state.
I think some of your closest enemies are your friends. You have to be very careful the company you keep. So what Daniel's alluding to for the listeners, yeah, is that he, if you, what episode was it when we shared the surprise visit to Switzerland? Anyways, but you came over, great weekend, and on that weekend, safe to say, we indulged ourselves with a fine food, innit?
And who proposed that particular fine meal?
Lauren, innit? Lauren, but she's on the health grind now, though, so she's on it now. It's on it now. So it was
Lauren.
What was it, like 100 grams of beef?
Who picked the meal?
Double patty.
Who picked it?
Sweet potato fries and cheese, milkshake, all that. So that was good.
Yeah, on my side, like he said, I celebrated my birthday on the 7th. I'll say coming up to my birthday, it was mixed, right? I think some tough times just in regards to family members. But I think as that was sort of building up to sort of my birthday, it just reminds you the importance of family. So like P said, he went to the mountains with his family, spent quality time with his family. I did the same, dinner with family, really small, quiet sort of celebration, but it just tells you how much you got to be grateful about. I think you spend the day reflecting
Mhm.
on where you are and the people in your life, and thankfully, good health. And I wouldn't say like P, I'm in my optimum physical appearance, but
We know.
I had my little 7th of November journey. I can back this top off as well, but
Easy, big
I
man.
don't want any of you
Easy,
guys
big
to
man.
feel
Easy.
You can
insecure. I
Chill,
back.
don't want
bro.
No,
any
no,
of
no,
you guys to
no, no,
feel
no,
Chill.
no,
insecure.
no, no, no. Wait.
Chill, bro.
You can definitely
Chill.
back off the top. The question is, what are we going to
This
see?
is a
That's the question.
PG/U
What are we going to
podcast.
see? That's the
I'm still
Chill,
question.
working on the
chill.
chest. Don't worry. I still work the chest. Don't worry.
Olu, this is a PG
But yeah.
podcast. This is not an 18 rated podcast. Keep that top on, please.
But Daniel, how are you?
So I've just been sidetracked because all I see on
Was
is
it
that plant
was it
behind
the
you looks
image
like
of my
it's
chest?
rotted. No, it's the plant behind you. Looks like it's dying.
That is good. It's good. It's good.
Sure.
Yeah.
It looks like it's
It's my
leaning
cap-
like the Tower of
It's
Pisa.
leading to the
Okay,
side.
cool. Yeah, big time. But yeah, so no, I'm good. Since the last episode, nothing much has changed. I can't recall. Just been working, spending time with family, doing things with the little one. So yeah, BAU, business as usual. I'm looking forward to some time away, traveling in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, be nice.
And maybe
Are
on
you
that,
sure?
then Daniel, I can build
Yeah.
on that. I think also for me, it's been business as usual as well. A lot of travel, working, trying to do everything as always, and things are going well. It's definitely a transition season, I would say, and shaping up to move into 2023 with exciting things in the pipeline and ahead. And I think actually with that, I mean, I've shared a message to UP, and I think I've also shared it to Olu, but Olu's clearly been busy with the CFO lifestyle. I don't know if he has seen the message or not, but I think, I mean, on behalf of Daniel and I, just a big happy birthday to you both. I think I can definitely say that we are extremely proud of the people that you've become, the impact that you're driving, not just for yourself, but for your family, for the listeners of this podcast, for both Daniel and I. And yeah, it's interesting. Whenever it's anyone's birthday on this podcast, it's one of those moments where I reflect about your journey and how much it's helped me on my journey. So thank you for being a solid sparring partner to the both of you. And yeah, look forward to celebrating more birthdays moving ahead. So yeah, exciting times. The future's only getting better.
Appreciate it, bro.
And now with that, okay, so we're talking about a
Hostile
a
situation.
hostile takeover. So I think what I will do is I'll just spend the next couple of minutes just to get everyone up to speed, because you may be following it, you may not, but just to get everyone up to speed on the timelines of what's been going on the last couple of months, and then we'll deep dive into a discussion together as a group. So just a timeline. Now, I don't think there's ever been a corporate takeover saga quite like this one, where the acquisition target is also the battleground on where the deal's being done. Now, this is, of course, talking about the world's richest person, Elon Musk. And he took a minority stake in Twitter back in March of this year. Already feels like a lifetime ago. I don't think even he could have imagined how quickly this situation would escalate. Now, most deals typically are done behind closed doors, but Elon Musk's $44 billion bid for Twitter could not have been more public. So first, the billionaire taunted the company with his 100+ million followers on Twitter. Then they had a legal scrap over the attempted backing out of the deal, which led to lots of private messages from Elon Musk being shared, to then finally, after lots of back and forth, a deal being done. Now, back in March of this year, Elon Musk quietly acquired 9% of Twitter. In April, in filings by the US SEC, it was revealed that Musk became Twitter's largest shareholder. Now, within a day of that being disclosed, Musk was offered and he accepted a seat on Twitter's board, with the chief executive at the time, Parag Agrawal, saying he was excited about the appointment. Then, within a week of that, in April still, Musk decided against joining the board, which fueled the speculation that he was going to make a hostile takeover. And by April 14th, Musk launched a hostile takeover for Twitter at $44 billion, but even he at that point was not sure whether it would succeed. Now, during that month of April, Twitter launched into an initial defense to then accepting the offer. Now, in the end of April, Musk decided to get his cash position stronger, and he sold $8.5 billion in Tesla stock. He did his own raising finance process, tapping his friends such as Larry Ellison, Binance, and Sequoia, all chipping in to Musk's bid, with Binance's chief executive CZ telling the FT that his company's support is essentially a blank check. Now, in May, Musk decides to put the deal on hold because of what he said, a lot of spam bots and a lot of inaccuracies regarding the bot accounts with Twitter. In July, Musk decides to formally announce his intention to back out of the deal, which the Twitter board said that they were still committed to the agreement and they want to get the sale done. Now, during the month of July, there was a lot of back and forth from a legal perspective. In August, Musk sells another $7.5 billion worth of Tesla stock, taking advantage of the recent rebound in its share price. Now, the trial continues, and then finally, in October, in a stunning turnaround, Musk sends a letter to Twitter saying the original $44 billion deal is still on, provided he can still drum up the financing, and on the condition that all legal litigation is halted. Now, since then, Elon Musk has walked through the Twitter headquarters with a sink, and he's changed his Twitter profile to Chief Twit, as well as many other titles. And now, as of October the 28th, Musk has completed the deal to buy Twitter. Now, that's the context and the timelines. We wanted to make sure everyone is up to speed on that. First question for this group to discuss: Twitter as a business, would you buy it or not buy it? P and Olu, why don't you guys face this one off?
Yeah, sure. I don't know, Olu, you want to kick off?
Yeah, I'm not sure if we have opposing views. I think it'll be good if we do try to take it from opposing sides.
True.
I'll try to look at it from both sides as well. But personally, I would not buy Twitter. And my rationale for not buying it is really twofold, right? So I think if I was looking to buy the company, or even looking at Elon Musk looking to buy the company, there's two factors that I would really take into consideration. The first one is the vision. What is the vision? What is the relevance of this particular company? Is it going to advance humanity, or is it around any aspect that I focus or have any interest in? So I think when you become a billionaire, your decisions needs to move society forward in some way, shape, or form. So, and if we look at it from Elon Musk's standpoint, right, he's done it with Tesla, right? He joined the company, built the company up, and that was a game changer. It said, look, I want to work on electric cars, which are going to have a massive impact on the environment. SpaceX, right? Another company where it's like, okay, this is a game changer, it's visionary, it's innovative. Social media company now, as like I think he's argued a case around freedom of speech, etc. But there's so many problems out there where I don't believe social media company, freedom of speech company is really going to move us forward, or is worth his time and resources, where there's bigger problems in which you can address. So that's the first one. Second one is, are you going to make money from it, right? So, okay, it might not tie to your vision moving, but are you going to make money from this? And I think it's shown from the perfect timeline, I think, Shawar, that you gave to us, right? And he's even said he overpaid for that company, the 44 billion, right? He tried to pull out because he was like, yo, I need to get a discount on this. It's like, yo, I want to put a value in for something. I realized, because everything that's happened in the market in 2022, if you look at what's happened to other social media companies such as Facebook, Snapchat, the valuation has dropped significantly, Twitter as well. He said, wait, maybe that 44 billion, I jumped the gun and it was too much. Let's
Yep.
try and renegotiate. So he's clearly said I've overpaid for it. So now the question is he going to be able to multiply his money? I'm not sure he's going to, or I'm not sure he's going to multiply it significantly. So I'll stop there, let P add some points, and then I'll
Yeah.
give my other views on the other side.
I think we might actually have opposing views on this one, naturally, without which could be interesting. So when I was thinking of the question, I actually said to myself, I wouldn't buy the business to actually then be heading the change and turning it around to actually meet Elon's aspirations, but I would definitely invest in the business. So it's just another way of looking at it. And so a couple of things I was thinking about. One, if we look at what are some of the key metrics that we want to focus on when investing in a company, revenues have been climbing quite nicely over the last couple of years. So they're currently at 5 billion, up 35% from previous years. And that is also in line with the number of users that are growing. So those are the two major sort of key points, and which is what you want to see when you're looking to invest in the business. But the parts that are sort of, this is why I potentially move away from actually buying it myself and being in that seat with Elon. And I'll consider more to be investing and taking a risk from that standpoint, because whilst they are growing their revenues, they're a loss-making company, right? So they're reporting a loss right now of around 200 million. And in the last 10 years, they've only actually reported a profit twice in 10 years. So the cost base is a real issue. And that's something that Elon has actually mentioned. Because they're making a loss, they can't actually offer any dividends to shareholders. So that's not an attractive point for other investors that are looking into the business. So I think another thing also I got here is that 90% of their revenues are only coming from advertising, right? So it's really one stream, which can actually be a bit of a risk when we look to the future and sort of how that can play. So there's some strong points as to why you would invest, and probably some downsides as to why potentially I wouldn't want to be in that seat with Elon actually buying the business and turn it around. The one point I'll mention, and I'll give it back to you, Olu, is around, speaking to his plans. I guess one other point also I can mention is that when you look at where Twitter ranks in terms of social media companies, it's not even in the top 10, right? It's at like number 17, right? So that's something which the question is what's then the aspirations to climb up that ladder, and actually how you're going to do it. And then I think the other thing I wanted to mention, the other point actually, Olu, which is what we can dive into a little bit in terms of, you spoke about how it's looking to make money. I think one of the things that Elon has mentioned is introducing a sort of premium subscription model, right? So where he's looking to apply different packages for people. You can, if you pay the sort of top rate of sort of $8 to $10, you might get less advertisement. Your boost can get boosted, even your post can get boosted even more. So things of that nature. So I think if that is to come into play, right? If he's able to bring in that, which I think he needs to, that can make a significant change to the business model and also to the trajectories moving forward. So definitely something, I think that's something that we can sort of touch upon a bit more in terms of what are the ways to actually drive further revenue.
Yeah, I hear you. I think it's just difficult where, even if looking at it from a point of view of an investor, I always say there's multiple ways to make money, right? And if someone wants me to invest with him, take yourself, right? You say, hey, Olu, I've got this great deal, that business that I want you to purchase. I know it's overpriced. I would turn around and say, why won't I put that money in Amazon, other companies where I know
Opportunity
that
costs.
other
Okay.
opportunity costs, right? So I would rather use other opportunities. And that's my only problem with this is, if there's never a bad deal, it's a bad price. So it's a conversation of, if this was undervalued, then yes, I would love to go in there as an investor. It's just, I don't see, and I think, and we'll talk about it deeper into this episode, and I'll pass it on back to you, Shuel, right? Is, I think there's going to be certain things he's going to do in this business that's going to transform the whole tech business in terms of how they manage their costs, subscription basis, some of these other things that you've discussed. But I think other companies are going to benefit more than Twitter. But yeah,
Interesting point. Last couple of things I'll say. Yeah, he's overpaid slightly. I think when I looked at some of the capitalization numbers, they were sort of reporting Twitter to be around worth 38 billion. He's paid 44 billion. 5-6 billion more, right? So I guess in the grand, when you look at those numbers that they're playing, is how much more above what it's really worth. And was it realistic that you get a discount if you're buying Twitter? So that's one thing. The second thing is I think we need to talk about is, would you bet against Elon? You know, if you look at examples like Tesla, you look at examples like SpaceX, that's another part of why you have to consider. A lot of this, I think, is actually to do with, would you, Twitter's one thing, but would you bet against Elon, right? And so he's shown, he's got a decorated CV where he's actually shown he's taken nothing into something. So that I think plays a big role. The last thing I'll say, and I'll just quickly come back to this point because it speaks to how quickly things can transform. He's spoken about, you know, shaking up the organization, which we can talk a little bit about in terms of how quickly he's doing that. But if I come back to this introduction of a premium subscription, if he's able to roll this out, right now they've got between, depending on what you look at, 200 to 200 million users. And if he's able to penetrate 20% of those users at a price of around $8 to $10, you can easily be adding around 400 million, 500 million of sales. And depends on how much it costs to actually grow that. That could actually be going straight to the bottom line. So I see an opportunity where very quickly, from a negative 200 million loss, you can start to turn it around because you've got someone like Elon who's bullish to bring in certain plans. So it's would you bet against Elon? I think is a big question for this conversation. But yeah, Shuo and Daniel.
Now, perfect. And I think P, you raised the perfect question. I think that's a good segue for us to discuss actually the world and the business of Elon himself as an individual. So yes, there are probably question marks still around the Twitter business model, but I think you and Olu covered some of the key points or the question marks or levers to pull. But yeah, that business of Elon, let's maybe deep dive into that together. So I think personally, my view, and this is just looking at his business acumen, this is a guy whose pedigree speaks for itself. He's founded companies from his very, very early days, continue to add value and sell them. PayPal, add value, sell. And then to go all in on his own talents and his determination to drive businesses in very, very important segments. For example, with Tesla and the electric vehicle, with the Boring Company and trying to solve some traffic issues, to Neuralink, to all these businesses that are trying to solve real world problems. And I think through that pedigree and that proven track record, it's amazing how during this Twitter situation, when he was trying to raise the equity for his portion of the deal, now we've all been in some shape or form trying to raise equity for a house purchase or an acquisition. Now, if you could send a text to a few people that you know, and instead of like a few 100K, etc., he's getting billions of financing through relationships that he's been able to build through his proven track record and building everything in public. So I think there's a lot of lessons there, no matter what level you are in terms of your business entrepreneurial journey, of building something in public, showing that you can demonstrate that, and then making sure that you cultivate these relationships with people who, when it gets to a point where, yes, you may be overpaying, yes, the deal might be a stretch, but these people are still willing to back you. And the founder of Binance to say that he's essentially a blank check for Elon Musk, I think speaks a lot to that. And I think also for the banks that are also providing lending, these are guys who are typically, you would assume, have got good risk controls. These are guys that probably have got good credit controls. They're balancing their own balance sheet. Olu, you can come back to me on this. But I would say for them to go into business with Elon, this particular deal may be a loss, but for them to be the book runners to float the IPO of SpaceX, for them to be the partners to then be the IPO of Neuralink, that is something that is worth that's a relationship that's worth cultivating as of today. So I can see, even from their perspective, with rates now increasing, the cost of capital to deploy even more going up, and this business having questionable financials, again, thinking long run, thinking relationships, thinking about what next. Even if this particular business ends up being break even, for them to show Elon that they commit to him could be worth something down the line with these other businesses that we know are continuing to change the area that they are in. So that's from my side. I think personally, from a business perspective, he's someone that if you get the opportunity to partner with, it's almost a no-brainer based on his business experience. And I think maybe Daniel, if you want to add on to that, and then we'll
before it goes to Daniel, sure. I think I agree with you in terms of the importance of networking. I agree with you the fact that it opens up doors to other elements, but I also think the text message element of it shows that it's less due diligence and it's more the person, right? Because when he was trying to pull out from it, it wasn't a situation, oh, Elon has sent us the data, we've looked at it to evaluate it. When you get to a certain level, it's your name, your reputation, where you say, you know what, I'm going to back this person versus the due diligence. So that part I'm not 100% sure about,
But
but everything else you see, yeah.
But just that due diligence piece with friends, completely
Yeah.
agree. But I'm saying
Yeah.
with banks, if you're thinking about the future business opportunity that you can get with this particular client, I can imagine that even banks, when they're dealing with wealthy individuals, they're happy to
Yeah.
take a loss on a particular business, knowing that they
Because in
can
the long
potentially offer
term
lending
position.
to their overall business, whether it's a personal or
So
business
I say
relationship.
that's not the due diligence of this particular deal.
Yeah.
It's the due diligence of the individual in terms of they've
Mm,
got capital that even
mm,
if they default, he's got Tesla to back up everything that he owns. But I don't
exactly.
think they've gone in to say, okay, how many bots there's, how many spam users, what's the valuation. They haven't done all that homework. They just
Yeah.
said, Elon Musk, he's worth this amount. If he defaults in this, we can go and get the money from Tesla.
Mm,
And Daniel, sorry.
No, I think with the Elon, I think Sherelle touched on a few good points that I was gonna bring as well, and the fact that he's got a very decorated career. He's very astute in business. His results have spoken for themselves. PayPal has somewhat funded his net wealth, his wealth at the moment. I think as of today, as of recording, it's just dropped below 200 billion, due to Tesla being at a 52-week all-time low. But that said, for 200 billion is still a lot of money. And when you zoom out slightly and look at the deal, as Olu and Habila were mentioning, is he's come in and immediately he's shaken things up. Of course, he's now the single sole owner. He's brought 5 men who are part of his core team to Twitter, and they've got very, very high experience, deep experience. They've known him for a long time. Some have been part of him since his PayPal days, some from Silicon Valley, venture capital like Jared Birchall, Jason Calacanis, and others as well. So he's brought in some very, very good people to be his confidants, his aides, whilst he oversees the day-to-day running of Twitter. How he's going to do it in conjunction with SpaceX, Tesla, and the Boring Company, it's going to be very interesting. But Elon's a man of many talents, as we've seen. And for him to come in being bold in his moves. So immediately when he came and named himself Chief Twit, he sacked CEO Parag Agrawal, who took over from Jack Dorsey last year. Along with that, he fired Ned Siegel, the CFO, as well as close to half of the staff being, their contracts being terminated. About 3,700 employees left, and others left their positions because of what was being brought into by Elon. But conversely, about 3 days after an email was sent to all the staff, about a dozen employees were contacted to be rehired because they found that they were very critical to the function and to the business. And so and many of them, I think, no one, I don't know the exact reports, but a lot of them have declined to come back. But of course, they've offered very generous severance, up until I think next 3 months or up until end of February yet, and especially with the RSUs and other bonuses that were in place. But what that told me is, sorry, just before I move forward, he was also somewhat testing the waters by saying that employees would have to work day and night and weekends, because as he wanted to roll out this, what was I think termed the blue tick verification, where the premium subscription, he wanted to roll that out quickly. Some hiccups came along, and then they decided to pause and re-roll it out after the elections happening in the US this week. But I don't think, I think the headlines and the news would paint it as a very negative picture that he's just getting rid of the workforce. But he didn't indiscriminate in the firing. He wanted those staff he wanted to find out from, the managers, etc., who are critical staff, and essentially let them go because they're running out of $4 million a day loss, $4 million loss a day. So of course, he announced that they need to cut operating costs and you need to start generating revenue, with 90% of the revenue coming from advertisers, and a lot of them suspended because Elon was at the helm. So a lot of automakers, GM, Volkswagen Group, and there were also snack makers, those who make Oreos, halted advertising. and as P mentioned, 89% of the 5 billion generated last year came from advertising. But what this has shown me is that Elon is he's not stupid. He's identified an opportunity. He's changing it into the way that he can make it thrive and be profitable. We all know that subscription-based model is going to yield fruit in the long term. Many companies have done it before, and for you to retain customers, subscription base is going to be good, and you're going to grow that exponentially over the years. So from what I've said, I think Elon is a man who I think you can back. What you believe in, his sort of personal views and etc.
Yeah.
That's aside. You know, we're judging the man on his business acumen and his business abilities, not the person he is. But of course, there can be conflicting, or there can be a crossover of where those two are non-negotiables from beliefs to what they implement day to day. But I think we need to think of it from a view of what is Twitter. Twitter is a platform. It's a form of social media. So when we look at censorship these days, it's very, very, we very much like when people are not removed, but to allow there to be a degree of what can and can't be said publicly and in an open arena. But when you look at the power that these social media platforms have, it's incredible. We all know that Donald Trump was removed from Twitter the time seems to be flying so fast. It could be 2 years, it could be last year, I don't know. But we all know that Donald Trump was removed from Twitter. We know that even in recent weeks, because of Kanye West and outbursts that he's made, many of his sponsorship deals have ceased. He's been removed from certain social media platforms, etc. We all know of Andrew Tate, who has said even banks had cut his account, and he was banned from all social media platforms. And when you think about it, it's like, it seems normal, but to some degree, it's actually quite frightening. The fact that we can remove someone because of what they say. I'm not saying what they say is right or wrong, but just because some people or a group don't like what has been said, they can easily cancel you from that platform as if you don't exist. And that's actually frightening. And I know Elon wants to kind of remove that and wants there to be freedom of speech. Of course, there need to be boundaries. But when you think about it from an angle of that's better, or it could be perceived as better, construed better for the long term, to allow people to speak freely. Well, how free, we don't know. But that makes a better form of allow diverse thinking and opinion on a platform, as opposed to everyone thinking the same. So from that point of view, I think it's better to some degree. Of course, there's a cap of what should be allowed. But then when you think about the future and what Web 2, Web 3 is, so for those, of course, we're hearing the term coined Web 3 a lot. And essentially Web 3 is the latest iteration of the World Wide Web, which incorporates concepts such as decentralization and blockchain technologies, whereas Web 2 is what we're currently in, or what we've been in since the 2000s. It's based around the idea of the web as a platform and centered around user-created content, social media, and blogs. And that's kind of what Twitter is, what Facebook's been, what Instagram's been. And then we're moving to the next iteration of the World Wide Web, which is coined Web 3. But yeah, I've gone left, right, all over the place there. But it's just some thoughts I wanted to get out. But would I back him from a business perspective? Yes, I would.
Yeah. I just, Dan, I think I echo, I agree with what you say. I think, and this is why I position myself as an investor as opposed to working alongside him, because when he sent out the notification to say, look, I expect people to work 24/7, you have to understand what price you're paying. But I think the lesson
is that because he would fire you if you're working with
Are you committed to,
I'll give you my money, but I'm not trying to work.
The thing is, are you committed to working 24/7 for something that you're not extremely passionate about? So this is where it comes back to your point, Olu, around what is the cause. I think that's where you say, am I going to buy the business? But investor, for sure, because I think one of the things he said in terms of aspirations, he spoke a little bit about tactics on how to grow revenue, but he's mentioned about WeChat, so the Chinese kind of WhatsApp messaging platform. They have about 2.2 billion users, and he's in a way, I kind of, when I'm reading the reports, he's almost suggesting that we want to push to that level, right? So by 2028, he wants to get revenues to 24 billion. So when I'm listening to these aspirations and plans, this comes back to the point around I wouldn't bet against him, and I actually see him being able to achieve, right, growing it to more than 1 billion of users and climbing up the ranks from its position now at 17. The other thing I'm going to say also, just lastly, I think one of the things you're noticing is that maybe outside of Warren Buffett, every powerful, wealthy individual wants to control, one of these social media platforms or the narrative. Or you look at Jeff Bezos buying the Washington Post, and maybe Elon said, "I need to own a platform," and Twitter was actually probably the best opportunity for me to acquire. So there's certainly agenda of him using it for a strong personal use in these other areas, and that's the part that is obviously remains to be seen. But I think he will reach those targets that he's mentioned, but it will come at a cost, and that's going to be the associates.
It's funny because I think even during this saga, Elon is redefining what it's like to be an owner in a public image or in a public
100%.
space. Because when do you see an owner going back and forth in Twitter, tweeting tweets, talking about $7.99 being too much? Like, he's an owner of Twitter, but he's having a thread from some of these celebrities who said, "Oh, they're going to remove themselves," and he's like saying, "Well, we need to make money. What price would you propose?" He's having like a conversation. When would you ever see that in any other kind of company where the owner is having direct back and forth with you, having a dialogue as to, asking your views? Whether he takes them on board or not, it's another story. But Elon seems to be very much not want to say in the trenches, but he's very much on the ground, ears to the ground, listening to see what's going on. And of course, he's got people around him, but ultimately we know he will make the decision that he wants to make. So it's quite interesting to see what companies and what owners do, whether they're public CEOs in a public company, or privately held companies and CEOs, what it looks like in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, as Elon continues to change the way we see businesses and interact with them from a consumer perspective.
Just quickly on that point, Daniel, I think he's learned over the years, I think obviously, that he's been obviously in the last couple of years tweeting a lot more. He's realized this all works, right? Going on interviews like Joe Rogan and speaking. So coming, I guess, down from up there to down here and engaging with the people in whether it's tweets or interviews or speaking freely about topics that you wouldn't expect him to speak on. I think it's worked in a way that it's engaged more people in the background. It's presented more opportunities. So I think we're going to see more of that, and I think he's going to continue to almost play it like we would, right? But he's got way more money in a different position.
I think I would say, and I'm going to try and take this from the other side so we have opposing views, right? But I think there's a saying from someone that's been cancelled right now, but it's like, no one man should have all this power. And the problem with him talking, and he's faced it quite a few times, is the influence he has on the market, which would then cause regulation. And that's why you see so many of these billionaires are very careful with constant communication. And you've seen this through when he released about Tesla, I'm going to make this company public, and it impacted the share prices, etc., etc. So I think he has to be careful, because I feel like there's going to be a period of time where we're going to see a downfall or a massive fine due to the fact that he doesn't know how to keep his mouth.
Wouldn't you say he's earned it? He's earned the right to be able to speak, freely, as he likes to call it.
Not when you have so much influence. It's like a president has earned the right to do whatever they want, but they know that every word that they have has a reaction,
has an impact. Yeah.
So I think with that power, you need to be more careful with what, like, even with, like, I watched a slight interview with Tate, right? And he was like, how one of the biggest mistakes he made was that when he realized he had more influence, you now need to be more careful with what you say. Like, let's be honest, right? This podcast, with the amount of listeners we have, we're going to say certain things, certain ways. If we're now having 1 billion people listening to it, hey, you got to be a little bit more careful with what you say, how you say it, because of misinterpretation, etc., etc. And I don't feel like he has that filter, which sometimes I think he needs. But my opinion.
I love that. I think Olu, thank you for adding that, and Daniel and P for the great insights. So I think hopefully the listeners can get multiple different angles of Elon as a business partner, and the pros and cons that he brings to it, and again his pedigree. And I think the only thing that I would add is he has been going a lot more public, but he's been going a lot more public on a product where he's engaging directly with his customers. And I think that customer focus, whether it's with the Tesla cars, whether it's anything that he does, having that focus on the customer and being very open with saying, okay, what price do you think works? What features do you think are good? Does an edit button really add value? I think if he was randomly asking this about a product that wasn't Twitter, then you could probably ask the question. But the fact that he's making the platform more aware, probably more people are talking about Twitter than ever before. It's getting more eyeballs. I think this is almost like a fourth dimensional marketing tactic on his side. But actually, I think this brings us actually to the next piece of the discussion before we predict bull or bear on Twitter, and that is the question about speed in business. Now, we did talk about some of the financials, and I think some of the guys have mentioned some of the financials, but maybe just to reiterate this, and this may be one of the reasons why he's being quick in business, and we can discuss how important speed is. Now, with Elon Musk's acquisition, experts reckon that he's added $13 billion of debt to Twitter's balance sheet. And as Daniel mentioned earlier on, at the moment, the business is losing $4 million a day. Now, a couple of other numbers to keep in mind. Pabilo did mention at the beginning of the episode the amount of annual revenue. So they're roughly at about $5 billion in revenue. And on top of that, they've probably, based on last year's cost structure, they had $5.6 billion worth of cost. Now, the final number that I'll just mention, with that debt that has been added, there's been estimates that just the interest payment alone for this upcoming 12 months after the acquisition, just the interest payments could be close to $1.2 billion. Now, if you put all of those numbers together, it probably indicates a very tight picture of what he needs to do and what he needs to do quick. And that's probably one of the reasons why he's going into the restructuring proposals. He's going into trying to add revenue with the Twitter Blue marketing proposal. Says all these different things, but ultimately it all comes down to speed and moving quickly. So this is a discussion for this group. How important do you think speed is in business, and what can we learn from how Elon's executing on changes on with Twitter?
Just a question before we answer that. Is he planning to take the company private?
It's
I
I
wasn't-
think with the
It's private
acquisition,
now.
with the acquisition, it becomes private.
It's-
Yes.
Got it.
It's private now because my shares were paid off. So yeah.
Yeah.
So they're
Got
basically
a call
Action notice.
You shouldn't be on this podcast.
So for the listeners, just to give some context with that, right, is Twitter used to be a public traded company. So that means your shares were worth a certain price. As soon as Elon decided to purchase it and it was completed, what happened is every shareholder received, I think it was $54, is what you receive per share. And now it's privately owned, so it's off. You can't trade it, you can't purchase it on a stock market anymore, and it's now just a private company.
That has an impact financially, though, on day one for Elon Musk. I'm just thinking it through now.
So you're the investor. You're feeling that debt on your-
No. Yeah. Which is so. So the debt piece, I know. I didn't bring that one up because I know that will fuel Olu. Like you bring up the debt, $1 billion a year. It's also it's a 20% on the revenue. You
And
give that to
interest rates are
Olu.
going up.
You give that to Olu. Olu's running, and that's the thing as well. Cost of capital now. You know Olu's going with that one. So
I was gonna use that on the beer.
I'm thinking now. What happens when you take a company public to private? And you've now paid out the shareholders. So, anyways, but are we answering the question? Bull or bear?
Yes. No. So going down to the
before
question. Going back to the question regarding speed. So Elon's obviously moving quick because he has to. The financials are probably pushing that.
Yeah.
What's everyone's view of speed in business and how important is it?
I think Daniel.
Yeah, Daniel, you go.
Go on, Dan.
I think speed's relative in business. I think speed's important, but it's also relative because it depends on what your long-term vision is, what you see for the future. I think Elon has thought about the future. He wants to make it incorporated into Web3, possibly decentralized to some degree, possibly taken into the metaverse. You know, there are a whole host of things that can be done in the future. Of course, there's a huge balance of debt on the balance sheet, huge amount. And with revenue being suspended, it's operating at 200 million annual loss. So that's frightening. You want to turn that around quick. You're now, 3,700 staff laid off with the reduction of force, or otherwise known as a RIF. So you're trying to do things and correct things quite quickly. Also, when you're looking at the C-suite executives, their severance is going to be, handsome. And he's also trying to get away of reducing or not giving out that golden ticket to the likes of Parag Agrawal and Ed Siegel and others. Of course, there are lawsuits and potential cases
They're gonna get paid.
of suing for them to be sued coming along. But when you take that out of the equation, of course they need to operate and adapt quickly. And there's no doubt Elon has conjured up thoughts about how he will turn things around from let alone from when he said he was going to submit a bid for Twitter, but from even when he joked about he will buy Twitter. He's thought about things. He's not a stupid man. He's got people close to him. He's friends with Jack Dorsey. Jack Dorsey may have even uncovered things that they may have spoken about they wanted to do while he was CEO. But of course, he wasn't a majority stakeholder, so he had very limited control what he could do, especially when you're a public company. When you're a public company, the chains, you're somewhat in a prison cell. You're caged to some degree. You can't go full reins as you want as a private company. Now that he's a private company, he can do what he wants. As long as it's above law and it's above the regulation, he can do what he wants. So I think speed's important, but when you're a man like Elon who's thinking long term, I think it's it's irrelevant right now. I think it's very relevant for him what he wants to do, where he wants to take the business. Advertisers will come back on board. The subscription model will take off. $7.99 is very, it's very small when you think about it from the benefits Twitter brings. I've heard people say that they get the majority of their news from Twitter. Yep. So Twitter's going to remain relevant. It's going to take a while to become as big as WeChat because WeChat is very much embedded into the daily lives of people in China. It's one thing that's not censored and one thing that's not, banned in the country. But I think the speed of which he needs to turn things around aren't a great, huge problem for him right now.
That's interesting. Because I would say, Daniel, that the speed is quick right now due to the debt element of it and how bad the business financials are. So go on.
But Olu, I'm with you. I'm literally thinking the same thing along as you. In 12 months' time, the loss is going to be 1.2 billion or more because that debt, it has to be paid. Yeah. But I think maybe where Daniel was going was around the fact that, Daniel, are you also thinking about the fact that this guy can leverage other assets around him to insulate, right, the losses that Twitter are taking to give him an opportunity to go. So that's the piece Olu was keep in mind.
He's got a good runway.
I hear you, but his actions tell me he doesn't, right? Because my argument is, or my point is that when I've done a few acquisitions and mergers of companies, it's one of the most difficult things to do in regards to understanding the culture, understanding how the business is run, understanding the product, making sure you don't break anything, right? So that's why you have to, especially in the early days, take time to understand the business, understand who are the critical employees, all of these elements, which I don't think Elon is doing, personally.
Of course not. Olu, you're forgetting, this was not a merger acquisition, this was a takeover.
Agreed. It was a takeover. But I'm saying, if he didn't mind carrying that 1 billion of loss every single year, I think he'll be moving slower than what he's doing. Like Daniel mentioned initially, they fired a large amount of the employees. And again, I'm not sure how factual this is, right? But quotes are that they're not asking people to come back in. That doesn't sound like someone that did a thorough I've done an organization thing, and you say, who's critical? Who can we not let go?
Usually that cycle in business is a little bit longer, right? So they go through a period and then they start slowly bringing people back to fill in the gaps.
But you know what this means, Pete? This means you paid me to, like, you gave me a severance to leave. Yeah, I'm returning that severance.
No, they will though. They will. You don't get both. They'll
be in the contract. They'll be in the contract.
Whenever that timeline ends, I'll come back. If it's 30 days afterwards, whatever the timeline is, I ain't coming back. So that tells me, right, that he's rushing this process. So, but again, going back to the question, is speed important in organization? Yes, but not too quick. Because especially when you're going too fast, it's so easy to break stuff. And you don't want to get to a situation where, especially now that election is coming up, where foreign countries or whatever are able to create massive amount of bots, influence the elections, all these different security elements in a short period of time. So I think speed, and I think Elon's going to make some great changes. And I think I was mentioning before, I think a lot of the stuff that he's going to do is going to change the tech space. I think the tech space has lived in a place where capital has been free or pretty much cheap. They've been able to get very fat in terms of employing an excessive amount of employees. And I think his thought process of let's go back to what is the minimum viable product. So what is the minimum amount of people you need, minimum amount of resources you need to create this product, to create this feature, whatever, etc. It's going to change the mindset of how other companies like Google, Amazon, Facebook operate. But moving too quick, you're going to break stuff. And I don't think, and based on his actions, it doesn't sound like he's got the luxury of moving slowly because of the debt and the leverage that he's carrying.
But yeah, no, great points. I think
so
I think the only
just going to interject. I was just going to interject there. What I'm about to say might sound paradoxical, but I think sometimes the speed of doing nothing can be more expensive than the speed of moving quickly. So if you don't do nothing can be more expensive than not moving quickly. He's laid off, from the 7,500 staff, just under half. And also, I think in India there were, from the staff that were in India, he's left like 12 there. So he's blitzing everything. He's blitzing everything, but then the cost of doing nothing could be more expensive to the business and the company. So
I think
back over to you.
Yeah, I'm thinking of speed in the context of the industry that we're talking about. This is a tech industry. So I think unlike other industries where maybe you can't move as fast as maybe the associate would like, whilst it is painful, I think it is important to move with an element of speed, faster than slower. And I think you can do it because it's tech. So the ideas he's come up with in terms of launching a premium subscription plan, you can do that straight away, right? You can roll out these ideas quickly. So I would, and Elon gives me an impression that he likes to break things, So I hear your point, Olu, but I think that's part of his personality and nature. I think maybe that's part of what makes him who he is. So I think he takes calculated risks. I also think he's not afraid to break something, even though it was a mistake, but it's just he goes with speed. So I think you can move with speed because it's tech. Sure.
Yeah, so I think lots of great points, guys. I think the things that I would add, probably the three things. One is, in this case, speed. I think it's important to think of the context of the wider sector. And if Elon was doing these reductions and changes and it was just Twitter, then it's one thing. But the fact that if you look at all other tech companies in that space and they're going all into double-digit reductions, that probably shows that this is a sector-wide trend. Now, of course, he's doing cuts that are even deeper and he's maybe moving faster than others, but I think that leanness, considering the numbers that we spoke about earlier, is something that he just has to do it. So I think there's one element of just the fact that the sector is reducing so much, he has to be quick as well. I think also that speed, because of the fact that it is technology, now that they have essentially code that they can modify, they can test, they can try something in the UK, they can try something in another country. If it doesn't work, they can switch back. Now I think he's trying to invigorate a culture of getting these things rolled out quickly, giving it a go, but I think he's also not afraid of failing in public with certain features and rolling back and trying again. And I think this goes to the last point of trying his best to use speed to invigorate the culture, because I think if you suddenly have a speed and a culture of let's try things, let's change things, that may naturally attract talent and people even within the company that are energized by that. And during these cycles, yes, things may break. Yes, things may also go wrong. There could be some issues, as Ollie mentioned, which is rightly so. But I think if you can attract the right people to the company at this point, and the right people within Twitter can jump up to say, "Look, I'm up for this," you can really make some big changes very quickly on. So I think overall exciting times. I've really loved this discussion. I think no matter what happens, this in a few years will definitely be one of those Harvard business cases that people will discuss and debate and see how things end up. So I think to close it from the episode standpoint, the last one is just a quick round robin in terms of whether you are bull or bear on Twitter. I think for this one, let's go to Daniel first, then Olu, then P, and then I'll close.
He's going to show
simple from me.
That ball looks a bit tame. That's not how bullish is that?
Initially, Daniel, I actually thought that was a mix of a bull and a bear. I like
the head is down, the head is not up. I don't know what it's going for.
Because it's charging. It's a bull. I'm bullish. I'm bullish.
And why? Don't a quick way.
I was just around Robin. I thought it was going to be quick.
Okay.
All right, Daniel,
For-
hit it.
for all the-
Olu asked a good question. Why?
For all the reasons I mentioned, even just live, fresh off the press, Elon is asking Twitter employees to convince laid-off engineers to return, including those who can carry out his Twitter Blue plans. So he's bullish. No, I think from his acumen, from his credentials, from his pedigree, I think he can turn things around. But I don't want to sit on the fence, so that's why I'm going bullish. But what I'm intrigued to see, and I worry, is we're forgetting he also is a CEO of Tesla and SpaceX. Depending on the performance of those companies, we all know you can't juggle three things at once. Not well. You can't do three. You can't execute and do three things all at the same time.
Whoa.
Not
Elon
at full
can.
optimum.
Elon can.
Not if he's doing November 5th for each one. If he's doing road to November 5th for each one, he can't be
Okay,
effective.
I hear what you're saying. I hear your point. Remains to be seen. But
Yeah,
No,
remains to be seen.
it remains to be
If
seen.
E-
So
if
I'm
Elon heard
bullish.
that-
No, I'm
okay.
yeah, he'll prove me wrong. Yeah, I'm bullish on the fact, but I'm just intrigued to know how things are going to play out, especially when the tech industry is 70% on the decline this year. Things, when you look at the global macroeconomic conditions, things are very, very precarious. So I just want to see how things play out, because his attention may have to divert from Twitter, which seems to be kind of him owning as a hobby, to diverting his attention more to Tesla or to SpaceX, or maybe appointing a CEO to run those companies. We don't know. But yeah, that's why I'm intrigued to see how things run out. But overall, I'm bullish. Olu.
Right, I love it.
Cool.
Okay, so Daniel is 1-0 to the bullish camp. Olu, what's your take?
I am bearish. Unfortunately, I don't have a
True,
bear
and
here
for the
to.
listeners, Olu's definitely bearish because Twitter does not offer any products in the oil space. That is very
Exactly. They don't offer dividends. They don't offer any of that. So he's not feeling it.
I'll give you
Hasn't made any money.
the reason why I'm bearish is simple. One, the amount of leverage. So the amount of debt that they have on the business means that they have to create a large amount of different revenue streams to be able to offset and make the company even viable in terms of break even. And the amount of mental focus you need to have on that, I don't think other priorities will get in the way, like Daniel said, Tesla, SpaceX, which are in my mind bigger visions and bigger ideas, innovative ideas for Elon. That's the first reason. Second reason is the only out for this business, and I think the big plan for this business is we made it private, going to change it up, do all these different things, and then in 5 years, whatever period of time, they're going to make it public again, right? Now, if they're going to make it public again to get funding from shareholders, I don't think people are going to rate it in such a high value. They're going to rate it in the same place that they're rating Snapchat, other social media companies. And based on that, I don't see it being a 3-4 times valuation of what they purchased it at. So based on that, where it's, yeah.
If you can get the revenues to where they need to be. But go on.
Careful, Olu. This might be an episode we dig up from the archives, because
I'm more-
That's important though.
I'm not on a fence.
But you're comparing it to No, it's good. No, it's good. But you're comparing it to companies.
Don't
that
compare it to
exist
Snapchat.
today. No. Don't compare it to companies that exist today. Think about
I'm
the future.
comparing
The same
it to
way when
companies that
the iPod came out, you had CD mini disc player. They
how
were
many companies
competing against
was
each other.
Steve Jobs working on, and that's the piece where it's like for him to create all these, increase the revenue 20, like compete with a Google, what's the Chinese WeChat, etc. You need focus, bro. Like it's not a situation like it's been like you guys are acting as
Elon.
if
SpaceX is charity
as if
work.
this company
Tesla's on
hasn't existed.
autopilot. He
This
can
company's
focus on
existed
Twitter.
for multiple years, almost 20 years, right? It's existed,
Listen,
right? You're trying to tell me that these 20
157.
years of people being there, they haven't been trying to find different ways to make revenue. You think they've just been creating gadgets?
Let's not talk about management teams.
Anyways, I've answered.
This is
All right, cool.
This is
So,
one for the archives
just
to dig out.
to recap for the listeners. Bullish team 1, bearish team 1. P, you go next.
Yeah, I'm bullish. Two simple reasons. One, I don't think it's smart to bet against Elon. I think his vision of growing a number of users to 1 billion plus, growing the revenue to 24 billion plus. Will, you know, and rivaling WeChat, I believe that he believes he can do it, right? So it's sort of believing into the fact that Elon can actually do it. And I also believe that he's looking for a challenge. He's looking for a challenge, and he's looking for an opportunity to say, look, I can take this from where it is to another position. When it comes to the financials, I don't think for Elon it's that big of a issue. I think he's got. I think no. My point is it's there. It's the
So what does
1.2
success look like for you bullish people?
Because
no, I think
the question was bullish or bearish and why. Otherwise, this episode's going to
Yeah, but I mean, like, what does it mean? Is it like it's worth more? There's a valuation increase. What is bullish? Is just a nice hobby?
No,
I'm
no.
just
I
trying-
think okay. No, when I think bullish, I think I'm looking at growth. I think he will grow the number of users, and I think he'll bring in those revenue growth plans to then drive it from 5 billion to 10 to 15 to 24. So that's when I think of bullish valuation.
And you believe it's going to be worth more than what he paid for it? 44 billion.
100%. I think so. Yes,
With
definitely.
inflation, yeah, why not?
Definitely. And I think the last piece on the numbers, yes, the debt is a thing, but I think he's got a lot of leverage, a lot of connections. He's pulled off the deal in the first place. He knows what he's getting himself into. He was able to pull 7.5 billion from Tesla just by taking advantage of the change in price. I think there's enough financials and backing around him to manage that storm to then take him to where he needs to go.
Cool.
Financials is an issue for us, not for Elon.
Money's got to be paid somehow. You guys are acting like interest doesn't get paid. You can leverage. I'm like, someone needs to pay.
Yeah, but it's,
what's funny is when Olu was saying that about leverage and stuff. I mean, the listeners may not know this, but Grant Cardone gave this podcast a shout out, and I was just thinking Grant Cardone needs to speak with Olu and I discuss this this leverage topic. Now, I think from my end, I'm in the bullish camp, and the reasons why I think there's no point repeating them. I think overall, Elon has proven every time that he's able to take control of something, add value in some shape or form, and be able to generate a value for his investors and shareholders. Again, I said already just a short while ago, I do think this will be an amazing business case that will be discussed in the future. And I think for us, as we grow individually, as we grow as a podcast, as we grow as a group, it will be good for us to just monitor and also deep dive and learn from it however best we can.
5 years, we're going back to this episode and we're going to see if it's worth more than 44 billion
no
or
problem.
if the investors have been paid.
No problem. Maybe 5 years from now, we can even invite him into the conversation. God willing. Let's see.
Touches 45 billion. We've won the conversation, bro. So I mean, it's not.
We're gonna adjust that 44 billion based on inflation. It's not just
no. This
you have to. You can't say 1 million 100 years ago. It's not the same a million now.
On that note, let's not inflate this episode for much longer. So I think I'll pass it over to Daniel to close. But thank you for the healthy debate, guys.
Listeners, whether you're new or returning, thank you for joining us on episode 157 of Take Flight Podcast. We hope we brought you some entertainment, but more importantly, some knowledge, some education to your daily commute, your day, your workout, or whatever it may be whilst you listen to this episode. If you have any feedback for us, you can find us on Instagram at Take Flight Podcast. But we're sure that the Twitter saga will continue. But until next time, stay safe and God bless.
Take off, take flight with you. For we never fly, but we're